It's Robin the Delta Crafter, and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Today's video is extra special because it's a part of the 3C's Winter 2024 Hop collaboration that I host here on YouTube. I have a few of my crafty friends who have YouTube channels joining me in this collaboration. We're all centering our creations around the theme of holiday delights. I'll have everyone's videos linked in the description box below, so please make sure you check them out. Let's go ahead and get started and look at the products that I'll be using for my creation. First up are these beautiful layering holiday bells from Honeybee Stamps. This is a great product to have in your stash because there's so many ways you can use these bells. I'm also going to be using a Tidings of Cheer sentiment from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to be using some candy confections from Tim Holtz. I love these little peppermints here. I'm going to also be using some extra thick foam dots. If you don't have extra thick foam dots, don't worry, I'll give you another tip to use later. I also have some foam strips. These are pretty thin, and that's going to work out great for my creation. And to find a red that matches the peppermints, I'm going with a cherry cardstock from Hero Arts. One additional thing that you're going to need is something that is flat that will allow some movement in this card. You can use a button. I'm going to be using a couple of these diamondoids here. Let's go ahead and get started creating the card. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to die cut my bells. And the base of my bells are going to be cut from that Hero Arts cherry cardstock. This is a bright cherry red cardstock that's going to stand out really nicely on the card. I used some mint tape to hold that die in place, and I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 of the bells. So I'm going to set up my die to cut out my second bell. Now that I've got my 2 bells die cut, let's move on to the other parts. So I had to do some research, and I found out that the little part that hangs below the bell is called a clapper. So we need 2 clappers, 1 for each bell. I've changed my cardstock. You can't really tell it right here, but I've changed to a white shiny cardstock. And I'm going to cut the bow as well as the detail for the bells out of this white shiny cardstock. You'll be able to see that a little bit later on when I get finished with the card. So just stick around and wait for the reveal to see what that cardstock looks like. I've got a fresh piece of mint tape holding all those pieces in place. Then I'm going to run everything through my Hero Arts compact cutter. You guys know how much I love having my small desktop devices that make it really easy to cut small things. So now that I've got all the pieces cut apart, let's go ahead and assemble the bow. I did cut out a second part of the base of the bow out of some regular white cardstock. That shiny cardstock is kind of thin, so in order to give the bow a little bit more strength, I just cut the backer again out of some regular cardstock. I'm going to double that up so that gives the finished product, that will give the finished product of the bow a lot more strength than it would have had with just that thin glossy white cardstock. So now I'm going to add the second layer of the bow. You could have used a different color for the backer, so your ribbon might be two-tone. Either way, I'm using the same color here, so I like my bows, I would like this bow rather, to just be one color. Then we're going to put that tiny little dot in the middle of the bow, and that's going to finish off the bow and place it under an acrylic block for it to dry. While the bow is drying, let's go ahead and add our detail pieces to our bells. Again, this is cut from some white glossy cardstock, and I'm just adding a few dots of some Beverly Arts glue to the back of that glossy cardstock and adhering that to our red bells. I'm going to do that on the second bell. And then we're going to place both of these bells under an acrylic block to help that glue adhere to both pieces of cardstock, and we're going to move on in our decorating. So the clapper is a little bit short for what I want to do with it. So I just cut a thin piece of white cardstock, and I'm placing a few dots of that Bearly Arts glue on the end, and I'm going to adhere my clapper to this piece of cardstock, and using my tweezers, that's going to hold it in place while it dries. This is going to give my clapper a little bit more length that we're going to be able to use later on to give the card some movement. So we have two bells, so we need two clappers. So I've done that to lengthen the clapper for both bells, and now we're ready to move on to creating our mechanism for movement. So I'm going to use about 5 of these super thick foam dots for each bell. I'm showing you the thickness there. If you don't have foam dots that are that thick, you can double up your foam dots that you do have, and they should give you the thickness that you need. What we're looking for here is enough space for the in this case, the little rhinestone there to have clearance to be able to move. You can use a button instead of a rhinestone. You can use many things. I don't like to use pennies or money for this. I think that's a waste. I'd like to use some extra items that I have around my home. So I took the clapper and I kind of measured it a little bit to see how long it would be. I trimmed it up just a little bit because it was just a tiny bit too long. And then now I'm going to add my rhinestone to the other end of the clapper. What I'm going to be doing is kind of positioning this rhinestone in between 3 of those foam dots. It's going to kind of hold it in place, but also give it room to move around. So that's what we're going for here. So while I was working on one clapper, I decided to go ahead and measure the second clapper and get it all set and ready to go. That way, when we get ready to assemble the moving pieces, everything will be ready to go. So I've got one foam dot in place. I'm going to place my clapper where just about where I think I want it to go, and then I'm going to kind of cocoon it, well, not cocoon it, but kind of place it in between 3 of those foam dots, kind of secure it in between all of them. It has room to move, but it won't come out. That's what we don't want. And then it's important to place your final 2 foam dots towards the edges of the bell, because that's going to give your clapper room to move back and forth. If we were to put it closer, we would really restrict the movement of the clapper, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to do the same thing to our second bell with a slight adjustment. So the very first foam dot that we're going to place, instead of placing it in the middle, we're going to place it just slightly to the left of the bell. I know I have it on the right there, but then I move it, and we're going to place it just to the left on the bell. And the purpose of that is so that I'm going to layer my bells, so they're going to be one is going to be overlapping the other one. And if I had put it any closer, then I would, or in the middle, I wouldn't have had the space to overlap them. It would have been too bulky. So I've placed the other 4 foam dots, and again, I kind of hid that little clapper or sectioned it in there where it has room to move, but it won't come out. So off camera, I went ahead and used a Swiss dot embossing folder to add a little bit of texture to my background. And now I'm going to place my very first bell. Notice that I'm holding the clapper in place with my tweezers so that I don't don't have that moving around while I'm trying to figure out the placement of the bell. And there you can see I just moved the clapper around with my finger. And this is where I was talking about before. I put that foam dot to the left so that when I turn the bell over and layer them on top of each other, they can layer very nicely on my card base. So now it's time to add our little peppermints to the clapper. We could have done this earlier, but it would have been a little bit more cumbersome to work with when we're trying to figure out placement of everything. So doing it at this point is probably the best. So we're just going to put a few dots of that Barely Arts glue on there and secure the peppermint to the bell. I think that this combination looks so awesome. That red cardstock, the cherry cardstock from Hero Arts, is the right color red to go with the peppermints. It doesn't clash, it looks perfect together. So we're going to take our bow, which has been sitting over to the side there. We're going to put a little bit of glue on it, and then we're going to adhere it to the top of our holiday bells. Because we only were able to put a tiny amount of glue on the bow, let's go ahead and put our tweezer on top of it to hold it down and make sure that that glue dries in place and dries well. So now it's time to go ahead and create our sentiment. Off camera, I went ahead and die cut the base as well as all the letters from the Tidings of Cheer die cuts that I have from Simon Says Stamp. And now I'm just using that Barely Arts glue again to secure all of the pieces to of the sentiment to the base. That sentiment, I didn't realize it was going to cut into like 3 different pieces, but luckily they were decent enough size that they were easy to put together. If you've ever had one of those sentiments that every letter is separate, oh my goodness, those can be challenging. Let me know in the comments below if you've had one of those challenging experiences with some sentiments. I put some of those foam strips on the back of the sentiment just to pop it up a little bit so that it didn't look weird against those dots, and it gave a little bit of a shadow because of that foam tape, or foam strips rather. Now I'm using foam tape on the back of the panel to give it a little bit of lift off of the card base. And now I peeled off the backer tape and we're going to adhere it to our card base. This card base is made from Accent Opaque 120 pound weight cardstock, which you guys know is my favorite type of cardstock to use for card bases. So you can see there that there's movement in our bells. I really do love the way that this card came together. I think this is going to add some definite delight to its recipient. So here's a close-up of the card, and you can see the shininess up there in the bow of that glossy cardstock and in the sentiment. The movement of the clappers and that peppermint swirl look on them just adds so much detail to these cards, and I'm loving this look for the holiday season. I did go ahead and make a different configuration of this card and use a different colorway as well. Blue and silver are one of my absolute favorite holiday color combinations, and I just love the way it came together in this card. So I used some of those rhinestones on the clappers instead of peppermints, and it really, really looks nice. Now, some of you may not be able to get your hands on those little candies from Tim Holtz. I wanted to make sure that I share with you some alternatives or some other options that you could use. These are some clay decorative pieces that I found at Joann Crafts. And they come in a bunch of different designs and shapes. So I had the little peppermints there. Now I'm showing you the little Christmas trees. We also have some little gingerbread men or gingerbread people. And then we have a mixed color peppermint as well. All of these could be used instead of the Tim Holtz peppermints that I use if you are unable to find those. But hopefully you'll be able to find something to be able to create this card. I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out the rest of the participants in the collaboration, whose videos will be linked in the description box below. If you're interested in any of the products that I used today, they too will be linked in the description box below. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, as well as on my website, thedeltacrafter.com. Thank you again, everyone, for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And until next time, everyone, enjoy!